just want to say I'm not a pastor or teacher, though. I'm just giving my opinion. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments. I'd love to hear it. All right, hey guys, I want to say we about to hop into a little reaction. The first things first, though, just make sure you like that video, man. Hit a little exit full screen, scroll a bit, like it, and then full screen it back up. You feel me? So today, I'm debating on which video I want to do. I'm thinking this one. Here's what even Christians get wrong about interracial marriage. Now, personally, I've never heard of an issue about this. Like, you hear some little twinklings every once in a while, like, I'm a little worried, I'm a little scared, but like never anything that outright said you shouldn't do it. This is why. This is bad. No verses to back it up. The only one that really came to my mind that might be used in defense of this is like the "Don't be unequally yoked" verse. Cause there's no Jew or Gentile, slave or free, man or woman in Christ, all are one. So I'm like, what could be the problem here? And I guess we're just gonna get into it and see why this is an issue in Christian culture, I guess.
What should Christians believe about interracial marriage? Well, first of all, interracial marriage assumes there's more than one race of people. Actually, there's only one race of people. The Bible makes it very, very clear that all human beings are descendants of two people, Adam and Eve. If that is true, then biologically there's only one race. 1 Corinthians 15:45 says Adam was the first man. Genesis 3:20 says Eve was to be the mother of all the living. The Bible makes it very clear there was only one man and one woman to start with. Now, Acts 17:26 says God made from one man all nations of men to dwell on the face of the earth. We all go back to one man. Biologically, then, there's only one race, which is very, very interesting because in the year 2000, the Human Genome Project, which was actually headed by an atheist, they collected DNA samples from different groups of people all over the world, and then they released their findings to the world. There's only one race. Of course, there's only one race. They're only confirming what the Bible teaches, that we all go back to Adam and Eve. Now, why do we see so many different groups of people on the earth today? What about different colors? Aren't there black people and white people? Well, first of all, there are no black people and there are no white people. Technically, every human being has the same skin color. It's a pigment called melanin. There's other pigments, but the main pigment is melanin, which is a brown pigment. And you can have a lot of it, you can have a little bit of it. It depends on your genetics. And so you can be a dark shade, you can be a light shade, you can be anywhere in between. Actually, there's many examples of twins, one dark, one light. It's just because of the genetics of the parents and the combination that the twins received in regard to how much melanin that they would have. And it was the event of the Tower of Babel in the Bible that actually caused the differences we see in people groups around the world, because when God gave different languages, probably about 70 different languages, because Genesis 10 lists the table of nations there, and there's 70 different families that moved away from each other according to their languages, because God had judged their rebellion there at the time of the Tower of Babel. And as a result of that, because those groups were isolated depending on who married who, which combinations of genes survived, etc., how much they did or did not mix with others, you end up with distinct people groups, but not races. That means there's no such thing as interracial marriage biologically. That means there's no such thing as biracial children either. There's only one race children because we all go back to Adam and Eve. Now, there is an interracial marriage the Bible does speak against, but it's not biological, it's spiritual. In other words, don't be unequally yoked. A Christian should never knowingly marry a non-Christian. That is the interracial marriage the Bible speaks about, and it's a catastrophe for families, because then it destroys passing that spiritual legacy on from one generation to the next. I've actually had pastors tell me, well, wait a minute, what about the fact that God told the Israelites not to marry the Canaanites? Weren't they keeping the races separate? That had nothing to do with biology. It had everything to do with the spiritual state of people's hearts, because the Canaanites were pagans. That's why the Israelites were told not to marry Canaanites. But remember, when you have Rahab, who was a Canaanite, the Bible tells us that she's in the genealogy leading to Jesus, and she's even mentioned in Hebrews 11 as a great person of faith. How could that be? Because she stopped being a Canaanite spiritually and became an Israelite spiritually, believing in the one true God. Then she's free to marry someone who believes in the one true God. In other words, it had to do with the spiritual state of their heart, had nothing to do with biology. So there's no such thing as interracial marriage biologically. Hey, where did these unbiblical ideas about skin tone come from? Many of the false ideas that exist in our culture today can be traced back to Darwin's ideas on evolution.
And I think that that's a great point at the end there that he made, right? It goes back to this research and this thing. When you see subconsciously or consciously, over time, they smallly but surely try to get us to weave in ideas like, oh, dinosaurs existed millions of years ago. But you're like, I'm still Christian, but dinosaurs lived a million years ago. That contradicts the whole theory of, not theory, but the whole claim the Bible makes that the earth is 60%, or my bad, 6,000 years old. Wow, I'm sorry. 6,000, 7,000, 5,000, whatever the years is old, because how can they live millions of years ago if the earth is only this old? And then it's this kind of thing, the race box, where it's like, oh, what race are you? Black, white, blah, 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 blah. There's only one race, buddy. There's only one race. And I won't lie, before this, I was confident saying, oh, I'm this race, I'm this race. I had no problem with the word race, the box checking of races when you're filling out documents, stuff like that. You have no problem with it. But now you can see how smallly but surely it's trying to get you against the word of God and against these godly ideas and everything like that. So you can see that kind of thing. But he also didn't even mention, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess the point of the video wasn't why. I guess there wasn't an established problem with interracial marriages in the church. I thought that that's where this was going, but I guess not. I don't know. I don't think it's like I said it before. I've never heard anybody complain about interracial marriages. Now, to be honest, cultural differences I do think can play a role also in marriages where people's culture. Yeah, this girl that I was talking to, no, not even talking to, but I heard her give this answer, and she said, being X race is like my whole personality, or being X culture is like my whole personality. And I'm like, there's so many people that are that race, that culture with you, and you don't have anything distinguishing you from them. Like, this is just the fact that you belong to this culture, that's your whole personality. Like she said, that's her whole personality. That's kind of sad, just a little bit, right? You ain't got nothing else going for you. You know what I'm saying? I know you got things going for you, right? You're doing this, you're this major, you're doing this, and blah 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 blah. You have interests and hobbies and all that stuff, but you can't say that's your whole personality. And I get, like, at the time, whatever the context of the question, answer, whatever, may have been like hyperbole, but at the same time, that's kind of crazy. And I think that shed some light that some people, they see their culture as something so much bigger than themselves, right? And obviously, first and foremost, we should be saying that for a Christian culture, right, we should be leading up a good Christian culture, finding people of Christian culture to not be unequally yoked, right, and be the same race spiritually. However, that's not how things always go. Like I did literally an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, I was having this conversation with my friends. They were talking about, oh, what would you do if you're dating this person, she's different religion, and you got feelings? Would you still marry them? And I'm like, no, because she's not a Christian. Like, it can't go forward, right? And they're like, well, you might change in the future. I'm like, with my faith, this is like how these things work. You can't be unequally yoked. You cannot marry a Hindu and expect good things to come on. Like, you're starting on unequally rocky ground. And then, while you may have the same faith and beliefs, right, then he did bring up the fact that other things can come into play, right? Politics, just logic or psychology, beliefs, whatever you want to talk about. And in that regard, I was like, he was talking about overall logic, and I said, well, from a religious standpoint, I let my belief shape my logic, right? So that it wouldn't come down to, oh, well, this is how we think about this, and she thinks differently about this in my future marriage, or, it might never happen, God willing that it does happen, God willing that it does happen, right? But in a future relationship where it's like, oh, there's this and this, like, we agree on the faith, but we don't agree on all these things. But no, it should be faith should shape every single thing else around that. And that's how that goes, right? And there's nothing wrong with being culturally something, right? Obviously, I'm black. I would love to raise my kids to where they would know Black African American vernacular English, or whatever the terminology for that is. But at the same time, I would not want that to be their primary mode of speaking. I would want them to be able to, explicate themselves properly with a decently sized vocabulary for their age group, and, constantly evolve their vocabulary, because I really love big words and finding words that mean super specific things so I can use them, not just to sound cool, but it's just like, this is how many words we've created just to fit really specific circumstances. Because people are like, I just wish there was a word for this. You know what? I'm gonna make it. And then you get words like, I wouldn't say this is one of them, but one of my favorite words is unwieldy, right? You can't really wield it easy. So it's just like unwieldy. So for example, you got to pick up like this box, but it's really big, and it's like it's not heavy. It's just really big and hard to carry. You'd say that's unwieldy, not because you're struggling carrying it because it's heavy, but just because it's built weird, it's shaped weird. That's why I love the word unwieldy, because a lot of things in life, you're like struggling with it. It's not heavy or anything. It's not. It's just built weird, so it's unwieldy. That's better than saying it's built weird, bro. Like, yeah, I'm just having trouble with it because it's unwieldy. Sounds a little bit more eloquent, don't you think? But anyway, back to the point, right? So there could be cultural clashes where it's like, well, we do this on Christmas, or we do this, right? And you've heard the classic trope of, well, my family comes over to my family's house on Christmas. Well, my family comes to my family's house on Christmas, and it breaks down stuff like that, and it's like, because the broader discussion was like, I was having with my friends, was when would you allow your spouse or future spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, to meet your family? And I said not until like really fiance level, like I've proposed whatever and I have intention of marrying right then and there, right? And obviously Christians should date to marry, right? And that's obviously what I would be doing, but you'd get to meet, because there comes points where it's like, yeah, you are dating to marry, but then something clashes, right? Not cultural clash, but like religious clash. You have different Christian ideas, even though there's really just one. Just follow the Bible for real. But that type of stuff happens, and Christian couples break up because of that before they get to the chance of marriage. And that's good that they didn't go through with that marriage and then find out that there's, bad stuff, not bad stuff, but differing ideas within that relationship. But if you introduce them before and then you introduce the next person, and it always gets to that stage where it's like, oh, we've been dating and we're intending on marrying, but it just never works out. And then it's like, how many people are you going to introduce, right? It's a respect thing as well. Because I want my daughter showing me a bunch of dudes that she's dating before she's just, because I'm like, why aren't you marrying them? I've seen like 6 dudes. What's the issue? What's the problem? Why isn't this work? Something's not working, and it can't just be them every single time. It's like a respect thing. I wouldn't want to do that to somebody else's daughter, so I wouldn't do that to somebody else's daughter, right? But that was the overall thing, overall discussion. And the same thing with like cultures and all that stuff, right? You let your religious ideas take that over to where the point where if it's, oh, everybody comes to my family's house for Christmas, everybody comes to my family, you got to compromise in some respect. I guess we're going to nobody's house, because I don't want to seem like I'm picking sides. Or how about we invite all the families to our house, even though I don't want a big house anyway, but that's besides the point. That's a breeding ground for arguments. It's a breeding ground for some disagreement where you have to work it out in a loving way, and you have to be willing to sacrifice and or compromise with things like, oh, we'll go over here for this amount of time, we'll go over there for that amount of time, whatever the case is, depending on where they're located in the country too. You could be dating somebody from California and you're from Florida, where it's like, well, you can't go to California and then be in Florida the next day, or not the next day, but in 3 hours. It's not like a 3-hour drive and we could make it. We could be there for lunch and brunch and all that, but then go over here for dinner. It's not always like that, and that's where the family dynamics come into play. How's the faith of your family? Are they going to be willing to understand that, hey, we can't make it because XYZ, the different Christmas will come over next Christmas? Or are they going to be the ones causing a fight, and then that's going to cause a little separation between you and your family? That's why stuff like that's important. But at the same time, like, back to the discussion, I wouldn't want them to meet it until it's like, oh, this person's going to be a part of our family, here's to meet her. But before that point, I'd be telling my family about it, like, oh yeah, I'm talking to this girl, she's doing this, she believes this is the same as me, and I really like the way she talks about this, and I really like the way she explains this, and I really like the way that her ideas mesh with mine about this, and I really like her way of thinking on this because it actually changed my idea, and she really likes this, and I find that to be really interesting that she likes that, and she's really passionate about it. When you're just telling them things and whatever, and then it builds the hype. Not too much builds the hype, as in like, oh my gosh, this girl is gonna be the perfect girl, and then they meet her and they're like, this girl is bland as a mug, like, because obviously you're gonna have a different relationship with her than, she's gonna be the first time that she meets them. But at the same time, you built it like, oh, I'm very relaxed that he found this girl that his ideas mesh with so well. It's to the point where it's like, you've only spoken highly of them about this person, maybe some here or there, you're like, I don't know, man, she don't like the tacos you guys make, or she don't like the family recipe of the tacos I made her. That's kind of crazy. So then when your family sees it, they go, how do you not like the family recipe tacos that were passed down for 7 generations? And you're sitting there like, my family don't like you now because I told them you ain't like the taco recipe, right? My family does not have tacos passed down from generation to generation. Just an example, but hopefully you understand the point that I'm trying to make, right? Where it's really just boom, you and her, your faith, how they clash, boom, everything else follows after. Your family's opinions, not too important. Why? Because there's that verse, the man and woman, they shall leave their father and mother and create their own house. What's that verse? Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Two verses. Obviously, this one is just quoting this, right? But there's specific emphasis. Now, it doesn't say a woman shall leave her father and mother, but it does say, therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. Almost to say that he shall leave them to start his own family, right? And with that, that's essentially what you're doing. It's like, well, if my family doesn't like you, that doesn't matter too much, because we are starting our own family where we will love and accept and, you know, be able to compromise with our kids and raise them in a culture of loving and faith. So that's really the end goal. And I don't think that other opinions need to get too in the way of that. If both of you love God and your faith is there, interracial or not, it's beautiful, right? Just the love of God and breeding a culture within that for your children. Just want to say I'm not a pastor or teacher, though. I'm just giving my opinion. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments. I'd love to hear it. All right, that's going to be the end of the video. Hope you guys have yourself a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.